Welcome to my kitchen. I'm Chef Gloria Cabral, and today we're going to say cheesecake today. All different types of recipe of cheesecake. First, I'm going to talk about the crust. We always put a crust on a cheesecake. Traditionally, we have a graham cracker crust, but this time I'm going to make an Oreo crust. This is going to be a no-bake cheesecake, which means no baking of the cheese part, but we still have to bake our crust. So I like Oreo cookies. I like different types of crust on it, and I'll show you a nut one later. And what I want to do is basically, it's 2 cups of whatever crumb you want, and 4 tablespoons of butter. So we just have to melt our butter for a second, which is nice and easy. What I bought was regular cookies or a chocolate cookie, a vanilla cookie you could use. And half of them I took the inside of the whites out because I don't want it too sweet. So what I want to do is make sure it's just ground enough that it becomes a crumb. So you want to put it together with just a little bit of butter. Here we go. Let's see, our butter should be ready. Nice. And I only use butter. One of my beliefs, as much as I can, is try, if I can't spell it or say it, I don't want to eat it. So butter I can. A lot of times I will make my own Oreo crumbs. And what I just want to do is bring it just enough. You'll see, just really easy together. So I can just squeeze it and hold it. It's not dripping of butter. It's just enough to hold it together. I make cheesecake all the time. In the fall, we'll have pumpkin cheesecake. Christmas time, a chocolate cheesecake with peppermint sticks. And they have a great cookie crust that you can buy with all kind of candy canes in it. In the spring, or as summer comes, you have those beautiful fruits. And the fruits we'll put on top of it. Very, very simple. It's to how you like it. With a no-bake cheesecake, we use gelatin. And that sets it up. Because you want it that when you cut it, it doesn't fall out. So the gelatin will hold it. But you have to know who your guests are going to be, because gelatin is made from beef and pork. And if your guests can't or don't eat it for vegetarian or religious beliefs, then you need to change your menu for that. See, I'm using my spoon as my tool, and what I want to get is a nice outer crust. But I don't want it too thick because I have to cut it. See, I'm going to put a nice layer. The spoon helps as a great tool. Most of the tools you have in your kitchen, you don't have to buy fancy things for. You don't need what they have tampers and things to squish the pie crust down. Get it nice and smooth. Very, very simple to do. Come across my edge. And I'm going to put this in the oven. I cook all my cheesecakes, and even though this isn't going to be cooked, I'm going to cook the crust because the oven's on at 300 degrees. I like it low and slow. I do have a little bit of my crust left over, so what I like to do is also make mini cheesecakes. And these can go in the freezer, so at the last minute, if you have company, you can just, my little cups. Oh, here we go. So if you have company, you can just pull out a few. It takes about 10-15 minutes to thaw in the refrigerator. And now you have a great assortment of what we call petit fours, just little 1 to 2 bite-sized desserts. And if you think that's a lot of work to do, I'll show you a little easier way to do that. So I take about a spoonful, and I poke it at the bottom. It just gives me a little bit of a base to put this on. There are so many different types of cheesecakes, different flavors you can use. Like I said, this is a no-bake. We'll do a traditional cheesecake, meaning it's going to be baked in a slow oven, and it's a slow bake. And there's a French cheesecake, which is still baked slowly, but what they do is they separate their eggs and their egg yolks, and they make a meringue with their egg whites So this way they can just fold that in, so it's very, very light. And their base is usually a slice of cake. That makes it very interesting. I'll make a few more of these because, you know, in my house you never know who's going to be stopping by, or you have to go to someone's house and, all right, we have to bring something. So I like to bring a few different types of pastries. Everybody enjoys a good pastry. It just makes you happy. So we'll make a dozen. There we go. Simple so far. When you think of crust, what can you put on the bottom of a crust? There are so many different things. If you say, oh, I don't have time to grind up the cookies, I don't have time to grind up the graham crackers, which is, like this is graham crackers are traditional to the bottom, I can buy mini cookies. And the mini cookies just go at the bottom as a base. Nice and easy. See, that saves me another step. And then they can also be used on a bigger cheesecake to garnish it. Okay. So I will just throw these in. I'll leave the cookies in there. That's not going to bother them to cook for a little bit. Unless you're buying a package of no-bake cheesecake, they're really not. It's time consuming a little bit because you're adding nice flavor to it. So this is one we call using a sabayon method. And what I'm going to do is cook my egg yolks over a double boiler till they hit 165 degrees. That way I can make sure there's no bacteria in it, and as a safety thing. But I always add my sugar to it, so it dissolves my sugar and it gets a real nice smooth feeling. See, just by mixing it, it'll turn it a light color. And it'll melt slowly. You don't want to cook it, you just want to melt it slowly. Oh, the flame is a little hot. This takes about 10-15 minutes to do. 165. Perfect. It can go up to like 170 degrees. What I want to do is shut it off. And I'll bring it to my mixer. Very carefully, this bowl is very, very hot. Scrape all your egg in there because you want to make sure every part of that egg is part of your stabilizer. And that's going to whip up to nice and light and fluffy. While that's doing, I'm going to check my crust, see how they're doing. It's nice and warm, slightly firm. If it's too hard, I won't be able to cut it. I'll put that here to cool. That's going to cool, so when I work with all my other ingredients, it's going to be nice. If it's too hot, it will melt it. Okay, so what I want to do, this is stabilized with something. Some of them are stabilized with chocolate. Some of them from the baking and the eggs cooking will stabilize it. This one's stabilized with gelatin. And these are gelatin sheets. A lot of times these are used in windows of gingerbread houses because they like them for the decoration. They look very nice. But they're great in the pastry world because you can use them very carefully. And the basic rule of thumb is every 10 sheets equal 1 ounce of the packaged gelatin. And usually the packages come in 1/4 ounces, so you figure 4 packages equal 10 sheets. But what's nice about this is they will only absorb 70% of their weight. So all I have to do is make sure this is filled in ice cold water. I'll put those in here. 5-10 minutes later, we'll squeeze them out and we're going to add it to all our stuff. They can break very easily just to fit inside. If you have a longer container, sometimes at work I have a longer container, I just put them in. Make sure you keep your hands clean because I'm always washing my hands. Some people like to use gloves because this is going to be a ready to eat. It's not going to go through a high temperature. So this way it will not kill any bacteria cooking it. So you have to make sure your hands are nice and clean. All right, that'll sit there. I'm going to turn this back on to start cooling and whipping up lightly. Beautiful. It is very light and ribbony. See, it's almost pale yellow in color. Nice and light. It's still a little bit warm, which works out very well for me. What we're going to do is we're going to add things to this. So I'm going to take the gelatin. Since it's warm, it's better to add gelatin products or anything like that into a warm product and then work your way cold. Because if it goes too cold, it's going to get hard fast. So I'll take my container already used and take my Jell-O sheets, which you can see right here. We squeeze out the excess water. You don't have to use water. You can use some of the parts of your recipe. Sometimes I've done it in liquor that I'm using in my recipe. It's always, liquor is quicker. Empty the cold water out, nice and easy. And I just put it in the microwave. I don't want it to boil, so I put it in for like 20 or 30 seconds. And I'll add that into my warm, and this is called a sabayon, which in many different ways you can put it on sauces, on different things. It's a delicious base for a lot of things. Typical in tiramisu when we make tiramisu. Once you learn different techniques, it's great to keep adding to it. Let's look at how the gelatin is. It has to be a little bit clearer, so I'll add another 10 seconds and it should be perfect. The next thing, I'm just going to mix that in there, and I'm going to add my cream cheese. And the cream cheese, I try to keep anything when I'm working with any type of ingredients and baking, and I know it's going to go in the oven, I try to get it warm at room temperature. There we go. It's nice and clear. I will fold that into my warm sabayon so we don't get any lumps. You know, if you ever had any Jell-O and you get that lumpy stuff, it's like very unpleasing to the mouth. See, now it's all nice and smooth in there. There's no lumps. I'll mix this around. Now, this calls for the zest of 2 to 3 lemons, but I like limes. So I mix some in with my cream cheese, and I'm going to put it into this when we mix it. Chocolate and lime. Does that sound interesting? It's delicious. It's a nice, refreshing flavor. It cuts, the acid of this cuts into the fats, so you get nice flavors in with that. Lemon goes great with chocolate. One of my favorites is passion fruit. And passion fruit adds a nice bite because it gives me a little citrus of lemon, orange, and just refreshing. All I do is I take with the micro zester, I'm just taking off the thin green layer, or whatever you zest. If it's an orange or lemon, you just take off. You don't want the white pithy part because it's not very appetizing. It's very bitter. I never throw these out because I'm going to use the inside at some point, so I just will wrap them later with a little saran wrap and put them in the refrigerator. I added 1 pound of cream cheese and I have more zest in there. There we go. Now we're going to put that on back on the mixer, but we're going to use the paddle, which is flat because it's more for creaming. We wanted whipping for the egg yolks and creaming for the cream cheese. What I did earlier, because I wanted to keep it nice and cold, and this is just whipped cream. And I lightly whipped it because I'm going to fold it in at the end because that's what's going to give my nice light flavor. On top of that, this recipe has sour cream. So you're having cream cheese and sour cream and whipped cream. It is a cream cheesecake, and it's cream as creamed in the techniques of mixing and creamy using cream cheeses and all these wonderful flavors to it. See, our pie crust is cooling nicely. What's nice about having a granite countertop or a marble countertop, this can go right from the oven onto your countertop. So it gives it a nice cooling effect really fast. It's not too hot or too cold to break it. Let's see how we're doing here. If you find it gets a little lumpy, use the whip and keep using the whip. You have to use whatever works for you. Every different machine will work differently. You have a nice little golden yellow, the nice little the lime zest that's in here. Just think I could make it lemon, I can make it orange, all these wonderful flavors. I'll add my sour cream a little bit at a time. And sometimes I'll even drain the sour cream if it's very wet. This was nice. It was a nice sour cream. It wasn't too wet when you open it. And it was just a sweet but sour cultured scent. That's why I always try smelling it first, because this is not going to be cooked, so I want to make sure this is nice and fresh. The problem is when you start making all these wonderful desserts, you get very spoiled to what's really, really nice and flavorful, which is a good thing. You want to be able to appreciate and teach everybody to appreciate how much work is involved in this. I keep scraping my sides. So you want to mix it all nice and neat. Now, when I only lightly fold in my whipped cream, because I don't want to overmix it. Because did you know if you overmix your whipped cream, you have butter. And which is good if I want butter, but not when I want whipped cream for my delicious no-bake cheesecake. I'm ready to put my face in it. As my children get older, it's, you know, you used to having the little ones around, so you kind of miss that. So we always try to find other children when we're baking for the holidays to come and help, because that's what holidays and baking is around. You figure any party you have, usually, where does everybody end up? In the kitchen. Especially in my house. I have a very small house, small kitchen, but they find their way in here and they don't care. They like that nice family feeling, comfortable feeling. Look how beautiful that looks. Delicious. What I always do, and I always teach this, you always test it and taste it, because if you don't know, if something's wrong at this point, you don't want to continue. All right. Nothing wrong with this at all. So you can choose to pipe it in a bag, pipe it in your pan if you want. I think I'm just going to spread it. But since I made a few of the small ones, I usually use ice cream scoop, baby ice cream scoops, and we use that what they call for portioning. And I can portion out one for each one, and then the rest I can put in here. So now I have 12 little desserts to go to my friend's house. We go next week. We're having a nice dinner, and I'll surprise them that they said they like chocolate, so chocolate and cream cheese, and I'll show you different ones later. And what's nice with the gelatin, this will freeze very nicely. So I can make, for the holidays, I'll make probably maybe 50 to 100. And then I just take them out as I need them, as my guests come. And then they'll say, oh, you've been working on that all day? Yeah, really. It's been very hard. And you just smile. See? Beautiful. I have 12 desserts for later. What I want to do, I know that's a little loud. You won't even notice the difference of what's missing on here. And on later we'll put strawberries on this one, because it'll have a nice figure, little lime inside, chocolate and strawberries. Or I could have even made more. Look at that. Maybe I'll save this and I'll save it for another little dessert for later, because I don't want to put it with the strawberries. I can mound this right up, but I don't want it to be too much, because I like to give a nice slice. So I will save this and put this in another little dessert for later. And I'll go refrigerate this and I'll be right back. All right, our next cheesecake is a traditional cheesecake that's baked in an oven. We're going to do the same type of crust. I'm going to melt the butter. And when I was saying about using different types of crusts, this is biscotti. And biscotti is like, oh, what is that? It's just a cookie. But this one has hazelnuts and sugar and all the spices. And this one has let's see, I have almond flour and all kinds of neat things in this. Could it be anything you have? Could I make it from, you know, like I said, I did Oreo cookies. I could do vanilla. I could do anything that your little imagination brings to your mind. I just add the butter. And I know in this recipe, this whole recipe, it's 2 cups of cookie crumbs and 4 ounces of butter, which is a half a stick. Will work. So I'm going to lightly mix it in here, and I'll finish it right in this container, because I don't like doing dishes. So if I put in a bigger bowl and it's another bigger bowl, I can just finish it right in here. Okay. Different ones. Some recipes will say just coat the edges, wet, you know, put butter around the edges. and coat them. This is going to give it a bigger crust. And I'm thinking hazelnut. Hazelnut. What do I like with hazelnut? Coffee. Hazelnut coffee, hazelnut lattes. So guess what flavor the cheesecake will be? It will be a nice, delicious hazelnut coffee cheesecake. Just taking my spatula along the edges, and I'm just doing like I did with the other cheesecake. We're just tightening up the edges. And I'm only going to go halfway up on this one. I'm using this as an insulator. A lot of cheesecakes require a hot water bath. And a lot of cheesecakes will tell you cook it at 325, 350. But you are the master of your recipe. Every cheesecake I make, I cook at 300 degrees. If it's low and slow, it's a better chance of being creamy. I don't like a crumbly cheesecake when I cut into it and it's crumbly and it's overcooked. And if you see them that they're cracked and brown at the top, those are overcooked. They should be a light, soft, if any coloring, light color, and not cracked. That's an over-baked cheesecake. So just take your time, plan it accordingly. This one takes about at least an hour and a half to cook. But the results later are going to be outstanding. And that's what you want. Remember, to every good meal, or every meal, you always have a good dessert. Because sometimes you go to a restaurant, the meal's okay, but if you have a dessert, you forget what the meal was like. I do that all the time. I'm not a fussy person, but I just like good food. And not expensive food, just good. If you make me a hamburger, make me a really good hamburger. All right? And all I did the same thing. I just going to put that in the oven and let it bake. Remember I said it's coffee, so different ways to get extracts is using coffee. Instead of putting like a vanilla flavoring or something like this, I like to heat my cream. Just about 30 seconds, just to warm it. And then I'll mix just instant coffee. It's making it without adding all the water of a liquid extract or anything else. I've done it with coffee beans, and what I do is I'll cook my cream and then strain the coffee beans out, but the extract works fantastic. And all I need to do is warm it a little bit because it'll dissolve. Let's see how this is. Just a little bit more. You want it to be warm so it will blend better. Nice and easy to do. See? Now think, what else could I use? Could I use chocolate, the ganache? Can I use almost any flavoring? Peanut butter. Imagine a peanut butter with a chocolate topping on it. That would be outstanding with an Oreo crust. It's what you feel you can think. There you go. Put my hot cream in here. And I'm just going to let it dissolve. See, it doesn't take much. While my crust is cooking, I just prep all my other ingredients. Very simple. It's not much to a cheesecake when you're baking it. That will sit there very nicely. The reason I have another pan here is because when I have to put my cheesecake in, I'll show you later, we have to fill it in a hot water bath. And what that does, it keeps the moisture so it doesn't get cracking on the top, and it cooks the sides so it doesn't pull, and you're not overcooking it. You're doing a nice, low, slow thing. It works great when you learn how to do it correctly. I do different types of cheesecakes, which I'll show you later, and you just have to think of different ways they would work. Now we're going to cream our room temperature cream cheese. So what you want to do is make it nice and light. Do you ever put it in there and you start mixing and then you start getting all these little lumps? That's a lot of times because it's not warm enough. And what creaming does, it adds air. And I mix that with my sugar. So this way it will add air and make it nice and creamy. So you get a creamed method, creamy. That takes probably 2 or 3 minutes. So while it's mixing and getting light, I'm going to break my eggs. want to make sure that if in your mixer, what happens is the cream cheese will go on the outside of your bowl. So make sure you scrape it down, all the way down, because you want to get the bottom. A lot of times the sugar will sit at the bottom. And when I mix it in, I mix one egg at a time, or one approximate egg, so this way it mixes in well. What I'm looking for is for it to come together. Sometimes they break apart, and that's called curdling, and that just will happen because of the temperature difference. And once I run the machine, all the ingredients will get the same temperature. They come nice and smooth, but you have to remember, it's only because there's no flour. If there's flour in it, I can't do that, because then it becomes tough. Flour has gluten, and that's the muscle that gives the bread the structure and the cakes the structure. So if I add it to a cheesecake, some recipes call for adding a little bit of flour. If I overbeat it, it will become a tough cheesecake and not very tasty. Sometimes you tend to get lumps in there, and if I get lumps in my cheesecake, sometimes I leave it, but sometimes I'll just put it right through a sifter or a strainer and squish it through so it gets nice and creamy. At this point, I tend to add the whip because now the batter is much softer, and I want to make sure I get all that little cheesecake broken up. So I add the whip to lighten it up, and then I will add my coffee flavoring. But towards the end, because I don't want to overmix my heavy cream, because I'll have coffee butter. Very nice and light and fluffy. I'll scrape it one more time. I want to make sure any little things on the side. Looks delicious down here. Look how nice and smooth that is. Get rid of all our lumps. And take the heavy cream and the coffee extract. Well, now it's a coffee extract. Your instant coffee, look at that nice dark rich flavor, color. I could add this to chocolate because coffee enhances the flavor of chocolate. When I make a chocolate cake, instead of hot water, I add coffee. And then it gives it a richness without adding fat. I just want to mix it a little bit to put into my cheesecake shell. See, at the bottom you tend to have some that the machine mixes and misses. Again, I will taste it if I have my spoon. Wow, that coffee is outstanding. You can choose, if you're worried about coffee being regular, use a decaf instant. It will add to the flavor. It's the same flavoring. It's not going to make a difference, but if it's better for you because you can't have regular coffee, use a decaf instant. If you're like me, I would use espresso, very strong. Let's see how our base looks nice. You can smell those wonderful hazelnuts from the biscotti and cinnamon and all the different things. Think of when you make a dessert, what you would like. You know, do I like a candy bar with caramel and nuts and chocolate? Well, I can make a cake or a dessert with caramel and nuts and chocolate. You just pour that right into that warm shell. Look at that. That looks wonderful. I would love for you to try making these and then emailing me at loveofcooking139@gmail.com. We have our email in the back. After every show, you'll see our email. And this way, if you'd like any of these recipes, I will send you them so you can really enjoy them. Or you learn with what you have and change your flavors, change your ideas. Now this cake, like I said, will take approximately an hour to an hour and a half. And what you're looking for is not cracking. You're going to have a nice, smooth finish, and it will be firm. If I shake it, see if I shake it now, it wiggles. When I shake it later, it's going to have a little bit darker brown, and it will not wiggle, but it will not crack. If it starts cracking, quickly throw it in the refrigerator to chill it fast so it stops the cooking process. Now I put this in a springform pan, and a springform pan has a little latch, and what that does is open and close the sides, because later I want to be able to take this out with ease. So but I always, because it goes in a hot water bath, I always like to put in a bigger pan to add some hot water. And this way it will cook nice and slow at, remember, 300 degrees, no matter what your recipe says. If I'm putting it in the oven, in a hot oven, I want to make sure my water is very hot as I can get it. So it just continues. It's not going to bring the temperature down or up. And I tend to slide it on this end, and I'll show you here, and I just pour it here. But I don't do that till I get in the oven, because if I do it now, I can spill it. I'm not the most graceful person, so or if there's little kids around, you don't want that hot water running around. So I just put it in the oven. I'm going to pour it up the sides, and I'm going to put it at least half to 3/4 of the way up. And the reason the foil just is extra protection that the water doesn't get into my crust. It just poured, and then I slide the cheesecake in the middle of my pan, and then I'll just close my oven, and I'll leave that for at least an hour, and then I'll check it in an hour. So just set your timer. And in an hour I will check it, because I know it cooks longer than that, but that's just a good time base. While that's cooking, I will get all the components ready to show you how to finish it and different ideas. All right, my ganache thickened up. I like having the extra hand of a container that I can put my pastry bag in to finish the cheesecakes. Now I can just, hopefully no mess. Make sure when you do that, you give it a little twist so it doesn't pour out. And now I'm just going to drizzle a lot, or a little, what you want. Look at that. Doesn't that look good? The color of the cake changed, so we're going to add a nice little bit of chocolate on the middle. And I'll swirl it around. I just like to accent and ganache that. Remember what I said? Nice chocolate, coffee, hazelnuts. What a yummy flavor. I'm not done with this one yet. Delicious. I can add a little bit on my mini ones, and I made chocolate cheesecakes. Just add a little bit of melted chocolate into my cheesecake batter. Look at that. Again, you can make all the little cheesecakes and put them in the freezer, and then just garnish them when you get company, and you'll be all set. When I said there'll be more to this, look at this wonderful, wonderful caramel sauce. Has all kinds of nuts. I have walnuts and hazelnuts, and it's a nice complement to my cake. This, I wish you could smell this, and I really wish you could taste it. But it's just a little bit of something. And when you put your heart into it and your love and everything else, it will have the best flavors, and everybody will rave about your desserts. Look at that. Doesn't that look yummy? There's nuts on it, so now if someone's allergic to nuts, they'll know there's nuts in it. We have chocolate in and around with fresh fruit. Let's take it to one step farther. How about a delicious taco cheesecake? We didn't add sugar. We made our regular cheesecake batter the same way, without the sugar. Cooked it with, instead of a crumbs, I used a nacho chip. I ground my chip just like I do with my cookies, and add a little bit of butter and bake them. I put my sauce in, and I had some nice taco meat with using the package that you normally do, with a little cheese, and I slow baked it. Served it on a beautiful salad base with some delicious homemade salsa. What a delicious lunch any time of the day. I prefer any time of the year because I love tacos. Oh my God, that is good. Well, thank you for coming into my kitchen today. It's Gloria Cabral for the love of cooking. We do this for our friends, our family, and the love of cooking. We'll see you soon.